to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I, again, like last time, apologize to anyone who's listening for the awkwardness of the Pledge of Allegiance. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to get any easier to coordinate as a group. Not doing this to attempt to offend anyone, but it's just a little difficult to pull off, that's all. I'll start the meeting with a quick roll call. If everybody, we could go around and just affirm whether you're alone or whether you're with somebody. So I'll go around as I see people on my screen. Roger?
Alone.
Dan Smith, I'm alone. John?
Alone.
Rob?
Rob Hortons, I'm alone as well.
Okay. Town Manager Steve Fournier?
I'm alone.
Mike LeBranch?
I'm alone.
Jeff?
I'm alone.
Mike Kennison?
I'm alone.
Councilor Dumont? You're on, there you go. Okay. Dave Jack?
I'm alone.
Joe?
Present, alone.
I don't think we count the AV folks because they're not technically part of the meeting. Eric?
Alone.
And, okay, Mike, for some reason you're signed into the meeting, Mike Kennison, twice, but we verified that you're alone. Next on the order of business is to read this declaration for the remote meeting. As chair of the Municipal Budget Committee, due to the COVID-19/coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing this week the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number. And forgive me for a moment while I switch to, we've gone to different instructions from what the memo was written around. One moment, please. Area code 1-646-558-8656. And the meeting code is 999-244-27753. Or by going to, I believe it's www.zoom.us and joining meeting code 999-244-27753. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We have previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the Town of Newmarket's website at www.newmarketnh.gov. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call area code 602-292-1221. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. We have just done our roll call attendance, so I believe without further ado, we can move on into the agenda. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the June 1, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion on those minutes?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from June, whatever the date was there.
June the 1st, 2020. Thank you, Joe. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, John. All right. Does anybody have any edits, suggestions, additions, anything that they noted in the minutes that they recall differently? I didn't see
I had
anything.
no issue.
Yeah, Patricia did a really good job with this one. I think everybody's getting a little more used to the remote meetings as well, so we're doing a better job producing it. All right, hearing no edits or additions, let's have a roll call vote on approving the minutes. Roger?
Approve.
Chair votes aye. John?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Mike LaBranch?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Mike Kennison?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Zachary Dumont? Eric Wagode?
Aye.
Thank you. We're unanimous in approving them. Zach, just so you know, for some reason you're not, even when you come off mute, we're not able to hear you. I can sort of read lips and gather what you're saying, but you can give that a shot. All right. Next item on the agenda, under new business, we've invited Steve Fournier, the town manager, to give us an update on the town's financial performance. Rather late, I apologize, but I sent out the town's end of May financial statements to everybody. So, Steve, if you could give us a quick overview on where we stand, and then if the committee has questions, we'll move on to that.
Sure, and I apologize as well for getting them to you, Mr. Chair, so late as well. In terms of our year ends, we're actually in pretty good shape, all things considered. At the end of May, we've expended 87% of our budget versus 93%, which we expended last year. Our target is actually should be around 91.7%. This is below where we are. For total operating budgets, as I said, we're 88 versus 93 the previous year. I think a lot of it has been due to the fact that we've been careful what we've been spending, but also we held back on a number of things because of the pandemic, including filling positions, which was recommended by the governor's office. But now that we're sort of getting into the flat area of the pandemic, we're going to start looking at addressing those items, especially for the beginning of the next fiscal year. On the revenue side, we're actually doing well. Also, we thought the world was going to end and we have a lot of negative issues, but we're not having that right now. We're seeing a brief lag time in collections. But other than that, they're coming in slightly higher than previous year. The only one not won yet is property taxes, but that's coming in now. But I think the thing we're going to realize is we're not going to see the impact of revenues in the fiscal year 20 budget. We're going to see the impact on the fiscal year 21 budget, which starts on July 1st. The number of people who may be not going back to work or, determined because of the recession that also began, that they're not going to buy those new vehicles or do the additions on their home, that we're going to have to review that. But we are keeping our eyes on that. Just so you know, currently we still have cash. We're fine. We've got about $11.4 million in the bank, so we don't anticipate having to issue any tax anticipation notes. Plus, we're still having a number of projects that we need to be pulling in from Gopher as well as FEMA for anything associated with the pandemic. So right now we seem to be doing well towards the end of the year. Just a couple other things to deal with the pandemic. I sent the chairs of all the committees. We started reopening town hall today. Today was the first day that we allowed some members of the public in. We do not encourage people to come. We still would rather you complete your businesses online or using the Dropbox, but there's some items that they have to come in that previously we were doing outside. But today was the first day we allowed people in the building. That being said, we also reviewed whether or not we could start holding meetings in person. So the only meeting room that we could actually get the distance between individuals, and we set it up for a council meeting. Just that was a 7-member board versus 5 or 11 for this board. And so we had to use the auditorium. You couldn't use the council chambers. You couldn't get the distance between the members. And also when looking at the auditorium, we were allowed to have 12 seats besides the counselors in the room. So it's just not physically possible to hold a meeting in person yet at the town hall. We could use the council chambers as an overflow room. However, if the meeting is in public and in a public place, and somebody requires that they want to be in that room, they have the right to be in that room. So somebody else would have to leave the room. And if all of a sudden 12 people want to be in that room, you have to adjourn the meeting because you can't have too many. And to be honest, this committee could not meet in person at the council chambers or any town hall at all. We just don't have the facility there. Recreation is going to go forward. I think many of you saw that. It's going to be a different type of summer rec program, but we felt that it was necessary to offer something for the children of the community in case their parents do go back to work, that we can help assist them. We do realize that this year will probably be a revenue loss for the recreation program, but that's understandable. And they have a surplus in the rec revolving fund. The other things that we're looking at is in the next phase for our own reopening. Like how long is it till we can do more in-house, more in-person meetings? And we don't even have meetings for small groups like department heads, just because can't get the space yet. And so we're still using technology like this. I think that's something else we're going to be looking at in the coming year is, I think, the old situation, you don't know you need until you need it. And so we had to look at our technology, and we're going to have to be investing a lot more into the infrastructure for our technology. We just, we've done a lot of things on a Band-Aid basis for many years, but we have to start investing more in the technology at town hall and all the town facilities. It's our intention to still go forward with filling the position of the facilities director that's remained vacant because of the pandemic. We didn't want to fill it and then not have the money to, in the coming year, to actually be able to afford it. And the other portion, and this just came out late Friday, and we're still hammering this out with a bunch of other municipalities, is the governor issued a new executive order which allows municipalities to reduce expenses in the current year. So previously, while we could stop expending money, we couldn't actually reduce the budget. So you'd still have to raise the funds. So say our budget's $12 million. Even if we stopped the budget, say we didn't want to spend $12 million, only spend 11.5, we still have to raise $12 million in taxes. The governor's allowing us that if revenues fall short, that we're going to actually reduce the budget. That also applies to the school district. So both entities will be able to reduce their budgets if revenues fall short in the coming year for anything to deal with the pandemic. We're still looking at it, but right now we're not seeing that big of a hit, which is the good thing. So that's really where we are. Again, this is the last month of the year, so should have more final numbers later on in the summer once we can close everything out. But that's it.
Steve, I guess in terms of reasonable worst case and in terms of worst case, the revenues coming in from the state from, meals, hospitality, whatever. I mean, I'm probably not looking at this right, but I'm looking at the fiscal year 2020 revenue budget. and from state is about $840,000 out of 30 million. I'm assuming that can't be the representative worst case because that seems fairly manageable. But what does the worst case look like if the state revenue related to all of these things just dries up entirely?
We don't know.
Speculate, if you would.
Speculate. We're lucky that we are opening up sooner, and that restaurants didn't have to completely shut down for the last few months. That there was still ability to have some revenue come in. The interesting thing will be: do people want to go to hotels and go out to restaurants again? That's and you got to think of it too. We're part of the state that only 50% of the people can go in to a building that has still the 6 feet spacing between tables. So we just don't know where we are going to be with that. Highway block grant, it's a grant, so we already know that they collected those funds from the gasoline tax. We don't know what's going to happen next year because, how many people were able to fill up their tank once a month versus once or twice a week the last few months. So that's going to hit us as well. We haven't seen those figures come in yet.
But you're not quite hitting what I'm asking. So let's frame it up. Of the total town revenues, what portion of it comes from property taxes, which are relatively inelastic to this, versus what portion of it comes from things that can get hit?
Okay. My apologies. Let me just pull that up. So what we have, so the highway block grant, we estimated getting at $263,664. So there's $250,000 would lose. We'd lose about $500,000 from room and meals tax, and an additional about $100,000 in municipal aid. So total 141. Right now in this current, we're estimating 141,000. If that was to go to all zero, none of us, I think it's going to go to zero. I wouldn't be surprised if we see probably 25% decrease in those revenues. Yeah.
Okay, and then that's against a total town revenue base of, if I'm reading this right, 30.6 million?
Right.
30.7?
Yeah. But that includes property taxes as well.
Okay. All right. So, nobody wants that, obviously, but it also doesn't sound like end of the world type scenario.
Well, and let me say something else. When we say we collect property taxes, that's for not only the town, but that's for the school as well, because the school does not collect their own taxes. So
okay.
That $30 million, we also have to cut a check to the school for their portion of that.
Which is about 16-ish. Is that, do I have the right order of magnitude?
I believe so, yeah. And then it's an additional about 800,000 we have to cut to the county.
Okay, so 17-ish, which leaves 13 for the town. If we took $500,000 hit, 126. That's 4%. Nobody wants it, but it's probably not going to break us either.
Yeah, the good thing is people still registered their vehicles, and people paying their mortgages, which are paying their taxes, because a lot of people have their taxes taken out of their mortgages.
Yeah, Steve, to be clear, I'm not trying to paint you into a corner here. I'm just trying to understand, is this like existential risk, or is this just life is going to suck for a little while risk?
I'll go with the second one.
Okay.
But if you would have asked me in March, it would have been the first one.
Okay.
It's a recession. I see this more, and this is just my opinion, not I'm seeing this more as a recession type hit than a catastrophic hit that we thought we were going to have. Again, if we get a second wave or something, we have to shut down again, that could be substantial. But we're just, no. As of today, that's what I would say.
All right. Questions from other members of the committee?
No questions, Stan, but I have a suggestion. I mentioned it to you the other day that we may see if we can meet as a budget committee at the high school next time around. If the distancing guidelines allow, I guess we could use the cafetorium or the gym if need be. But I'd also like to give the committee a tour of the new construction before, students come back, presuming that they do come back in the fall.
It sounds good to me. Let's maybe kick that discussion to the other business near the end. Just, I don't want to keep Steve any longer than we need to, so.
We'll look at it on our end.
Yeah, and let me know, Mike, because we can easily help with the measuring too, because it's different. Everybody has different ideas of what 6 feet is, but it's 6 feet all around, and just to make sure, so we can help out as well.
Okay. Other
Steve.
questions okay, go, Mike.
Yes, Steve, you mentioned that you had some projects that, the town had planned on doing that you've put on hold. What type of projects are we talking about, and are they funds that will be carried over for the next budget cycle, for the next fiscal year?
We actually started picking those up again probably in late May. A lot of them was like public works projects, roads, and yeah, they're going to be carried over for the next year. And originally we weren't going to go for bid for paving projects this coming year, but we are going to now, just because of the fact that prices are low, and hopefully we can get more pavement out of it.
Okay, thank you.
I want to reward Zach for being the one person who figured out how to use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. So,
can you folks hear me now?
Yes.
That's all. I just wanted to make sure it was working.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Joe?
Yeah, Joe. Steve, you're talking about, you made a comment about technology updates. Now, in the capital reserve, there's already some amount of monies for rewiring the town hall and doing some other technology update. What else are you talking about? And do we have an idea of expenditure here?
Sure. Yes, that's a big part, is the rewiring, making sure the infrastructure, the hubs, the switches are all up to date. We would have one go down and the whole system would go down. So that's a big portion of it. We also want to look at what everybody has on their desktop for technology. What we learned is, desktops aren't the way to go. Laptops are really the way we should have it. And look at it to be as mobile as possible so people could work at home if need be. I think that's one big part of it, is we've learned over this past couple months, and I think this is every business, it's possible to work from home. This may not be ideal, but there could be times that we need to. We also need to look to update just the software in general. We currently are using the Google system suite of software for a number of things. However, we still use Microsoft Office in the day-to-day operations. So we're going to be switching from Google over to Microsoft just to make sure everything is seamless when we're working on items. Because if we can't be in a room together hashing out things, we have to do things remotely. We rolled out, as I think I mentioned the last meeting, Microsoft Teams. So we are now, all the department heads have that, and we're going to be rolling that out more for staff so we can communicate better without being in each other's offices or personal space all the time. But I just want to put in there too that I don't know if the budget committee is aware that I did appoint Bill Tappan as the CFO, CIO for the town, and the council confirmed my appointment at the last meeting. So he's doing basically a master plan with our IT contractor to figure out what do we need and what do we need fast versus just trying to piecemeal it together.
Okay, all right. So that's a good thing then. Okay, so you've got a plan in place here.
Yeah, we don't want to do it piecemeal. We're trying to get a plan to attack.
Right.
Yeah.
Roger?
Steve, can you give us an update? Is the Callan Dam on schedule?
Yep, we should be. You're going to be seeing the drawdown probably late summer, early fall. You will notice that significantly. That's when they're going to be getting in there to do the work. we're going to be having a public meeting to let people realize that beforehand. But we should be, like I said, late summer, early fall. If it remains dry, we should be all set to, to get in there then. Because we only have a certain short period of time that the state allows us to do the drawdown.
Thank you.
Other questions for Steve? Going once, going twice. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Next on the agenda is an update from the school district. I know Susan's been on vacation, so I think Dave Jack is here tonight to give us an update on where the school district stands as of their most recent financials and the outlook for the last month of the fiscal year.
Good evening. Thanks, Dan. I think in front of you, and I apologize for everything. Again, it wasn't all Dan's fault about getting this out late. We didn't get it out in what I would term a timely fashion. So the ownership resides on both sides here. At any rate, on June the 18th, we gave a report to the school committee based on June 12th figures. I tried to do them a little more recent at that point, just to bring them up as far as we could without projecting too far out. As you can see from the cover letter, the revenues are in a good position. We have about 106,000 at that point. That was above and beyond what we had projected. It's probably going to improve a little bit more as we finish out the year as well. On the expenditure side, we have, if you looked on the report, there was a balance of about 668,000. That amount's going to fluctuate a little bit between now and the closing of the year, and we're not going to close here for a little bit yet, even though we're getting close to the end of June. We still have to, we're still doing business, and we don't actually close the year out until we get sometime into July. With the school board, we had always targeted a balance of approximately 500,000 to 600,000, and the balance we're targeting is everybody wants to know what the unassigned balance is at the end of the year. That's the balance that we return that would be used to reduce taxation, if you will, when we set the tax rate in October. So that target balance right now is probably closer to 600,000 than it is to 500,000. The way you get to your target balance is a combination of excess revenues that you didn't plan on and unexpended balances that you have at the end of the year. So the combination of those two come into play. The other thing that comes into play also is at the March meeting, there was a transfer of $50,000 to a trust fund that was approved in warrant article number 8. We're going to be able to, at the end of the year, be able to fund that complete warrant article. So that transfer will take place. And so I think that we're exactly where, not, I won't say exactly, but we're in the same vicinity that we projected a month ago. Feel pretty good about closing out the end of the year. If you looked on the financial report at the time, there was about $2.7 million worth of encumbrance left. Goodly portion of that is attributable to salaries that we still had to pay out because we hadn't finished paying at that point. So when we update this later on in the summer, you'll see exactly what that has been reduced to. A lot of the expenditures that you see, particularly in the technology area, we had about 163,000 there, and another 150,000 has to do with the technology that we needed for remote learning. And as Steve Fournier had indicated on the town side, we had the same expectations on the school side. There was a lot of things we had to ramp up to get to remote learning and continue to do that. We still have no indication other than I think everyone would like to return to school in September, but we're there's a great deal of dialogue going on both from the state level. We're going to hear some more from the Commissioner of Education tomorrow. And again, you'll hear from the governor shortly after the 4th of July. as to what the direction that they are suggesting. And it'll be up to the individual school districts to determine how it works for each of the school districts. Within Newmarket, you continue to have a number of teams that are in place that have discussion and planning going on to several different models, including business as usual. It means going back, a hybrid model, which is a combination of, the other is to do remote learning again, all of which bring different challenges. We're trying to ramp up as we speak in terms of what does that mean if we go back into the schools in September? How do we clean? How do we transport? All coming with slightly different costs that are not normal in a regular year. So there is a fair amount of that going on and has been going on since we came into this process back in March. But at the same time, I think that in terms of trying to keep your revenue stream together and to try to anticipate that it's important that we make sure that we can do everything to contribute to the tax base and ensure that our revenues are in place and our expenditures are in place so that our unassigned fund balance is either going to be at least the same as it was last year or slightly more. So we think we're in that position at this point, and we'll know better probably sometime in mid-July. We have a new auditing firm in this year. They have already started the audit. What's going to be different for Newmarket from our auditing standpoint is the timing of the audit. The audit, when we put the bid specifications out, we asked that they were on board so that we could have our audit done probably early in August so that we look at for certain numbers that we use at tax rate setting that are accurate and are the same numbers the auditors are using. And we think, and we don't think, we know we'll be able to do that at this point. So that's a good thing because it takes a lot of uncertainty out of as you go forward. So with that, if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything I can.
Can I throw one thing out before we move on to questions? Dave had emailed me earlier. The committee had requested from the school district an accounting of the amount of legal expenses that went to right to know requests. Dave is working on this, but it's just a very substantial amount of work to disaggregate that from legal expenses and pull it all together. So it's a work in progress. It might optimistically be available by before the next time we meet, but just wanted to let everybody know that. John, I think you were.
Yes, Dave, in the last year's audit, there were a number of what they termed deficiencies. Do you know where we stand with those? Have they all been addressed and fixed, or are they still working on some of them?
So I believe that the majority of them have been either completed and or they're in progress. But what I would like to do with that question, I would like the next time we meet, and I may or may not be in the meeting the next time. Your new business administrator starts July 1. However, I will make sure that for all of those pieces that we bring you up to date as to where we are in the process of that. Because a goodly number, and I don't want to speak just right off the without going back to look at everything, but I'm fairly certain that most of them have been resolved.
Okay, thanks.
I'll speak up to that. I saw that audit. The things that they criticized or came up with were not significant. I think there was like 3 items, and they were all pretty minor, I thought. And maybe Mike can talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to, make light of them, but I think they have been corrected. I can say that, Dave and Joe. But this was a process of going back and forth with the auditor. The auditor report, I think they came out with a draft report, and the superintendent asked them to go back and look at a couple of things, and they came up with those issues, which is exactly what you want an audit to do. you know. And just so folks are up to speed, the reason we changed audit firms is we had used Vachon and Cloquet, that's the existing firm, for I think for about 5 years. And best practices are to switch up every 3 to 5 years. And so that's what's happening this time around. And the new firm is Plodzik and Sanderson.
Roger?
Dave, is your successor on board now?
So the status is Jana Mellon is your new business administrator. Jana is completing her last couple of days in the district she's coming from. We've done approximately 4 or 5 days of transition already, meaning she's come over to the district and we're going through the transition, and she should hit the ground running on July the 1st. She will be here full time.
Good. Secondly, can you give us an estimate of the balance in the interest account from the building loan that won't be used under the various articles that were approved?
All right, let me back into that question for you. I believe I can come up with a number that you can't hold me to because it's still gaining interest and there are still some things. I believe the number that we were looking at in total interest was somewhere around $825,000. Of that, I think all but about 125,000 or in that area, and probably no more, has been spoken for. So that kind of is in the vicinity. I'll go back and make sure that we will have a more accurate piece of that as we're going through the audit as we speak. So you'll have a better number at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's probably more for Mike. I know the school's going to have to do a fair amount of investment in technology. Are you guys working with the town side or talking with the town side? It sounds like maybe coordinated. Maybe there's some way we could save some money by coordinating things.
Yeah, Joe, that's a fair question. We actually have the chairs, Tony and I, and the superintendent and the town administrator are going to meet on the 7th to discuss where we're all at that point, July 7th, with planning for school reopening, and that will be part of the discussion. So yes, but nothing concrete so far in terms of sharing technology, but that will be part of the discussion. If we need to acquire anything, is there, and the town does as well, are there efficiencies that we might look at there? We'll certainly discuss that.
Well, certainly one of the things you definitely need to do is to be able to communicate, or with the town side, right?
That's
we
right.
Hope that whatever the school does and then whatever the town does, that you guys combine the networks or whatever it is that you have to do, and so that you guys can talk.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that Steve mentioned tonight is them going to Microsoft Office. I mean, the schools basically use Google, so I guess that's something we'll need to talk about as well, whether those two systems can interface with each other, well. But just looking ahead,
pretty seamlessly. We use both where I work.
Yeah.
In fact, we're on the verge of dumping Microsoft.
Right, and it's not only a technology issue, but it's a training issue. Make sure folks know how to use either one. But the other thing we're looking to do is have a joint meeting of the council and the school in late August, because there's a lot going on right now with planning for COVID, and we're going to give a joint presentation to the community to tell folks where we're at. I'm sure there'll be communications well in advance of that as we come up with our plan. But, one thing I want to emphasize, and I guess everybody knows this, so I might be telling you something you already know, is that Newmarket is not planning in a vacuum. When you think of how many of our staff live outside of Newmarket, we are taking that into account as well. They may have situations in their own school districts away from Newmarket, like say, for instance, their own district is remote learning. Can a teacher, with kids in that district come in and teach at Newmarket? There are just so many variables that are developing all the time. The other thing is I don't know about the rest of the folks on the call, but I mean, I'm hearing from my office, we have 300 people in Manchester. There's talk of folks starting to go back. Well, again, things like that affect planning for the district and the town. That means, if we want to, have an in-school program, we're going to have to be able to source things that everybody else is looking for. Perhaps masks, cleaning supplies. Interesting note that before the pandemic broke back in February, the district had ordered a sanitizing machine. It basically looks like a leaf blower. It's a backpack device that you've seen them on television probably, that to disinfect large spaces relatively quickly. We still haven't gotten that. I guess, Dave, as far as I know, it was sourced out of China and everything's kind of been held up. So there's lots and lots of moving parts here, and the COVID spread is one of them. Who knows what's going to happen there?
Other questions for the schools, Dave or for Mike? I had one just looking at the financial statement. So as we discussed it, I was expecting that we'd see minimal savings in transportation, but for the most part, we were keeping the transportation contractors whole. So I was just curious why it looks like special ed transportation looks like we're saving quite a bit of money on that relative to what we'd budgeted. Is that under a different arrangement from the regular ed transportation? It jumped off the page at me.
So under the regular transportation, we probably haven't released the encumbrance from the original piece. We had agreed that there would be a reduction from the regular transportation. We first had agreed that they would discount some things, and we agreed that we would continue to service the contract so that they could retain their bus drivers and so forth as here. So in that particular case, Dan, I think what you're looking at is there appears to be 38,000 that's encumbered. I believe the bulk of that will be unencumbered, and that will be a savings. With special education, there were a lot of different parts moving in there. There were pieces that there seems to be more, but I think even without this, we probably would not have spent as much as we anticipated.
Okay. And then the other one, that in terms of places that we, other than just regular ed and special ed, speech, it looks like there was like close to a third of the budget that we're not spending. Are those services just did not end up being needed or couldn't be provided?
Sometimes with some of those positions, they sometimes they're very difficult to find. Sometimes they start out as a personnel, a person that actually is working for us, employed by it. And then sometimes we have to contract that out through a company if we can't find somebody. At this point in time, it just appears as though we did not, in that particular case, those funds are going to be left because they weren't utilized, whether for whatever number of reasons. And again, that's one where I think it would warrant, you've asked a question that warrants a follow-up answer because there's a significant amount of money left. And if I were looking at this, I'd ask the same question. So I'll put a follow-up in.
Okay.
Next meeting, you'll have that as well. You'll have a lot better answer too when we finish up at your next meeting. Most of these encumbrances will be released. You'll see what the balances are at the end, and we'll go forward from there.
Okay. And I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the school district more or less the same question that I asked the town. When I look at the breakdown of the school district's revenues, about 75% of it is, direct taxation. The other 25%, you've got the state education tax and the adequacy aid that make up the largest part of it. What is our sense of what the worst case scenario looks like in terms of what could happen to the funding that comes in from the state? And, again, are we at the existential risk level, or are we at the, wow, this is going to be difficult to manage level?
I'm guessing at this point, if we looked at our revenues and you indicated to us the district assessment, I guess that's our largest piece. Obviously, that comes from taxation. Everything we can't provide in revenues is kind of the rest of your budget is funded by local taxation. So I mean that's one that that probably that's going to be a derivative of how people are able to pay their taxes. And as we heard Steve earlier this evening, it does not appear to be a problem yet. It might be in the future. So I guess that's a piece, that's the wild card, because we don't have control over that. It really based on what the ability to pay will be. Some of the other areas, the adequacy aid, state education tax, we haven't had an update on that yet. We get those updates from the state, so we've seen nothing at this point. Could those be impacted? Possibly, yes. And then the other pieces are less. We're looking at special education aid, Medicaid reimbursements. I think we've already looked at those. So going into next year, my suspicion is we've already taken into account how they might be affected based on, even before this. I don't know that they'll be affected by necessarily the pandemic or anything of that nature. I think those will come anyway. So I guess what I'm saying is, until the state tells us or gives us different numbers that we can use, my sense is that those would be the areas of concern. And again, what you're able to provide on a local level, that's really I mean, and again, you'll set a tax rate in October. You'll have a December payment, if you will. So people start to pay in December, and where you'll get a lot of money, if you will, at the very beginning. And then if we're going to have a problem, let's say in cash flow or something, it appeared to me it becomes sometime in the latter part of the year in March, April, when you're not able to do that. But nothing appears to be at that point yet, though it could happen. The issue with the schools, though, is that we spend a lot of our money up front. A lot of our money gets tied in as we go forward. So it's hard to, if you were to say in April, if you have to put you have to reduce something, it becomes more and more difficult. The longer we get into the school year, the harder it is to reduce expenditures, if you will, that aren't tied up in personnel and benefits.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Looking back at the agenda. I guess no time like the present. Mike, we appreciate the offer of being able to meet in person at the high school. I don't know whether we need something so formal as to vote on it. I just would, I guess, leave it to between probably the superintendent and the town manager to determine, what those parameters look like. Can we do it safely? Can we not have an unmanageable risk of so many people showing up that we would have to adjourn the meeting because we couldn't accommodate everybody? given our track record as a committee in the 5 years I've been part of this, that seems like a relatively low risk, but it's I guess something we have to be mindful of. I mean, does that seem reasonable to everybody that I'll send an email out after this to Susan and to Steve, if they can look into that and determine what measurements and dimensions we need on this problem?
Sounds like a plan.
It sounds to me like we should, let them see if we can do it, and if we can, that'd be good.
I mean, it would be nice for the first time in a long time to actually all be in the same room, and candidly, from my standpoint, to not have to read that ridiculous memo one more time.
Mhm. I'd like to take Mike up on the offer for him to give us a tour of the
Oh yeah,
building.
absolutely.
I know everybody's itching to get in there from the public, and we'll explore whether we can do something broader, with proper distancing and mask and all that stuff. Maybe sometime in August. We'll just have to see how that plays out. It may depend in part on our planning and what we got going on in the buildings. But I heard from lots of folks who really like. They've seen it from the outside. They'd like to see the finished product, and I've seen it, and it's pretty impressive.
What would be kind of neat, and maybe this is something some of the students would be interested in contributing to, but just to do like a virtual tour by video of the newly renovated parts of the building.
We'll get the robot team on that one.
If there's no robotics competitions, then they can. Roger?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that I don't know how to exactly to word this, but I think we ought to have an operating policy that says that materials that are going to be used in our meeting need to be distributed to the committee, at least 48 hours or 72 hours in advance. And otherwise, we don't have a chance to review them. It's very difficult to listen to somebody talk about and reference something that, we haven't had a chance to look at. And too often it comes in, afternoon of the meeting. And I think it reduces our effectiveness.
I do not disagree. Zach, you have something a comment on that?
The council had similar concerns and issues a short time back. I definitely think that it is within reason to say that, we're not going to bother considering something or not, give time to something if you aren't willing to give us the time to be able to go through and actually review and be thorough about it. I would just be mindful, however, some items do come at the last minute. It's one of those things that we should take with a grain of salt, but I'd be okay putting some sort of procedure in place to say, we need to be mindful about the time and be respectful for the other committee members here.
I think that if in our agenda there was a comment that said, where it says we've invited Steve Fournier or Susan Givens or whoever, Joe Blow, to talk with us, that we would say we need any materials you would like us to use need to be in our hands by such and such time.
The council has a policy, I believe it's 2 weeks before our meeting, that you can't add anything new to the agenda. For the budget committee, it might be appropriate to maybe do like a week out or maybe 72 hours type of thing, where everything is, when Dan's sending that agenda to us, on the Wednesday or Thursday before the Monday meeting, we have that time through the weekend to go over. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that's really what I'd like to see.
It's pretty much standard procedure in the districts I've worked in to do Friday at 5 o'clock the week before you're going to have the meeting. It's been a standard. So it wouldn't be that unusual.
No.
objections here. Makes good sense.
Okay. I mean, I'll commit to try to do a better job of, if I haven't seen the materials by, say, the Wednesday before our Monday meeting, to,
Hey, Dan, your mic's not working?
oh, shoot.
No, can't hear you. Yep.
Hold on just a moment. Is that better? Okay. Yeah. I'll try to do a better job if I haven't seen materials by, say, the Wednesday before a Monday meeting to.
Can anybody else hear him? I can't hear him.
I can hear him.
Oh,
I can hear him.
I can hear.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. It's the first time I've ever seen this. But anyway, yeah, if we've not seen things by the Wednesday before a Monday meeting, to reach out to the town manager and the superintendent and remind them that, we do need some time to look at these things. So
good.
I'll put a note in my calendar to make sure we have that. Joe, you still look like you can't hear me. Are you able to hear me now?
Joe, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, yeah. I don't hear Dan talking. I can see his mouth moving.
That is.
Can you hear me?
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, I can hear you fine, Joe. Can somebody play telephone between me and Joe? So
Right. If he asks me to do something, can you relay that information to me?
Will
He can
do.
hear you fine, but you can't hear him.
this is bizarre. All right. Any other business anyone wants to bring up before we adjourn? Can someone ask Joe that question, please?
Any other business, Joe?
No, not for me.
None.
All right. I would entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Mike.
Yeah, you had on the agenda review of summer meeting calendar. Do you want to go through that just briefly?
Yeah. Let's. I had sent out a calendar. I'm just going to bring up my normal calendar here. So let's just go away. So our next scheduled meeting would be July the 27th. We're essentially the last Monday of the month. July, August, September the 28th, October the 26th. Or is that October the? I generally don't see a need to meet any more often than that until we get into November, which should be when we'll start getting the budget information from the town and from the school district. So, does anybody see it differently? Oh, okay.
Joe, Dan just reviewed the calendar up through October, which is the last Monday of the month, and then beyond that will be dependent on the town's schedule and information availability.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Zach, you had your hand up.
Sorry, there we go. I forgot I wanted to mention this just to put it up there. The town council's next meeting is going to be July 15th. We're only meeting once in the month of July, so we won't have our normally scheduled first Wednesday meeting this coming week. But at that meeting, there is going to be a public hearing on resolution 2020-2021-01. That is a mouthful. It is to authorize the town manager to sign and submit community development block grant applications and execute documents which may be necessary, etc. Essentially, there's about $4 million available in the community development block grant funds provided through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. And the town is looking at submitting several applications to get some money into the community so we can improve some of our some projects that we want to get going on here. To be completely honest, I don't have a ton of detail at this present time. It's still something that I'm going through, but if there is anybody in this committee, or if they know anybody who wants to speak towards any of these, come to our electronic meeting on the 15th, and you can share your thoughts and feelings on this. If you are interested in actually reading the text of the resolution, it is available on the Newmarket nh.gov website under the Town Council Agendas link. And I will also just send it to you all via email at the end of this meeting so you have it. But I do think it's something that you may find interesting.
My experience with community block grants has been that they're very useful if approached properly. So I think that's a good thing to do.
All right. Any other items anyone wants to bring up? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, Roger.
Second.
Thank you, Zach. Let's do a roll call vote. Roger?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. John?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Mike LeBranch?
Aye.
Jeff? Oh goodness, can Jeff hear me?
Did you say Jeff? Because I also can't hear you. Aye.
Mike Kennison?
Aye.
Joe?
Joe?
Joe, do you vote?
Aye. Aye for Joe.
Zach Demont?
Aye.
Eric Wagode?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you and apologies for the comedy.
Thank you.